So, TK is going to stop being two letters on the screen when he gets to his house. And Zach, God knows what he's doing.
Adjusting the tin can to make sure his Wi-Fi connects this time.
Yeah. He's with his lady, apparently, donating his 24 chromosomes, enjoying some southern fare. If he joins us, he joins us. Great. If not, no worries.
No crawfish.
So, I thought a good topic for today would be the aha moments. Don't know about you guys, but I got a couple of instances in my career that I can definitely kind of point to as like real turning points in my understanding or the work that I was doing, and basically like the direction that my career took. And I think certainly in the earlier stages of my career, if I wasn't feeling, that feeling of like, oh, I'm a fraud and I'm not having those moments at least a couple of times a year, probably not learning as fast. But I think as you kind of get along, there's a natural slowing because you don't really want to be pivoting like drastically every year because it should be like an incremental evolution. But who wants to go first?
I'll jump in.
Do it, baby.
I think the most formative aha moment for me was actually in college when it was my junior year, so my third year in, and I was coming to the realization that I knew I wanted to be in collegiate S&C, but did not have the best example of that. And I was reading some stuff from like James Smith and Buddy Morris and Coach X on Elite FTS back in the day, and they were all kind of talking.
That was Buddy Morris, right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's Buddy Morris.
Who was the angry coach is the one I was thinking of. Is that Bob Fitzgerald?
Bob Eilenfeld.
Yep.
Yeah. Bob Fitzgerald was his nom de plume.
Got it. But mainly stuff from like James Smith, really talking about a lot of the foundational concepts that became what is now the governing dynamics of sport. And was reading a lot of that and was comparing that with my experiences as an athlete and was realizing there was a pretty big gap between those two concepts, and started looking for other places for, just to see what other schools were doing for strength and conditioning. And it's funny because we talked about this before, but, I stumbled on videos of Eric talking about what they were doing at Kentucky and about the high performance model. And it was just this, like, I very distinctly remember it being this huge light bulb moment for me of what sport preparation should be and what we should aim for as practitioners. And so like everything from that point on was very, very oriented towards that ideology and means of approaching the job. And then I think the second one was probably when I actually got to my internship at Kentucky with him a few years later, because I was initially a head strength coach at a high school, and you got kind of chucked in the deep end, and all of a sudden you got to throw a program together for 200 kids. But it works because they're in high school, and you can just make them sniff the barbell for reps and they'll adapt. But then I get to Kentucky, and that was the moment where I very distinctly remember kind of falling off of the peak of the Dunning-Kruger curve into realizing how much more there was to the job and what it, pragmatically looked like on the floor to deploy this high performance model and then to, deal with staff dynamics and what have you, that were kind of the feature elements of my time at Kentucky. And then really my time at William and Mary was it was a very, very continual aha moment it was the first time in my career where I felt like I was truly learning how to do the job. Whereas a lot of my experiences prior to that were much more via negativa experiences of like, okay, that probably doesn't work like that. Shouldn't work like that. Shouldn't look to do the job like that. But just, I'll gas y'all up. Being with you and Eric, and then eventually everybody else that we brought in was very, very formative, and kind of illuminated the path for me forward of what the high performance approach and mindset, if you will, should look like and how that should be carried forward with me. So I would say those were kind of the three defining inflection points in my career that really oriented me and then kind of steered me in the right directions of being humbled enough to realize there was so much more to know about this job with the second one. And then the third one of being very guiding of me in the directions that I need to look to go and continue to go to this day.
what is an undergraduate student doing reading James Smith? Yeah, just out of curiosity.
Dude, I was like, it was like, I mean, I knew I wanted to be in sport performance since I was in like 7th grade or 8th grade when I realized it was a field. And so I was always very oriented towards, I was really lucky too that I had some awesome mentors that guided me towards reading on Elite FTS and things that were put out by James Smith, by Buddy, what have you. And it was just one of those things that, for reasons I can't fully explain, it just like the ideas you were talking about really enraptured me and kind of spoke to me as being like, the case he presents for why sport preparation needs to be much more synchronized and globally minded. It all just clicked to me. And so, yeah.
You'd say it's irrefutable.
Irrefutable. Hell of a word. So, yeah, I got lucky to have the right people guiding me at the right time to be reading something like James Smith as a 20-year-old.
Fucking hell. JJ, what about you, bro? You were pretty lucky, I have to say. Like, people you surround yourself with. How old are you? You still like, what, 14, 15?
I'm 25.
Bro, I was an intern at 25.
Yeah. And I've basically finished. Probably for me, the biggest aha moment, I guess. I mean, you have loads throughout your career. Like you say, if you don't, you're not learning. But was when I went over to you guys and I saw, I mean, you'll say an attempted high performance model, but I saw a high performance model in practice. Like, actually, every day everything was based around, okay, how are we going to win? How are we going to win? How's this helping us winning? And then I guess going into that, you're like, oh shit, it's not just all about what's going on. I kind of already knew it, but I guess it's just seeing it. It's not all about what's in the weight room, what we're doing on the field in terms of physical prep. It's, okay, how is this relating to the sport? How's this relating to the position? How are we going to win the one-on-ones? And then it's like even more dialed in than that, the way it was explained to the players. With attack, we're trying to create space, close space, and you kind of brought it to them, not just, oh no, you need to feel your inside edge a little bit more on that cut. You brought the big spectrum stuff and then went down. Because then suddenly the players kind of understood broad spectrum, what they were trying to do. I think that's probably the biggest aha moment, just seeing that high performance model. I read about it in James Smith and stuff. I hadn't seen anything like it. And then, I went away and tried to put that into a high school environment to a certain degree.
Bro,
and suddenly you realise
we were so far off finishing.
Yeah. You just knew you were going to say that.
Well, we were. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes. Like, I think, we tried to roll it out to way too many people too soon. I think, for the sake of visibility and being on the shop floor, Eric never should have set foot in the gym. Well, I literally had a conversation with him once where I was like, you were not brought here to do stretching with golf at 6:30 on a Wednesday morning. Yeah, mate, I think what it is like, I know a couple of people that have tried to do it, and it's like what we did was we implemented that model as best we could with the authority that we were given to do it. You very quickly reach a ceiling with that, and then it's like, I think TK will relate to this. It's like, well, once you've done that, then it starts to get to the unpalatable part where you have to be like, for a few people. Yeah. Yeah. What about you, TK?
I would say two big aha moments. I would go with one. I went over to London. I was working with Tom Farrow and Taplers, like Ian Taplin. With Richmond was like, and a big one that was like the idea of being as robust and kind of like agile, if you like the word I've been Latin likes to use, and like how your periodization and planning works and how you program and things, and always having like okay, what's the most important thing we need to hit? If the most important thing we need to hit is speed or agility, like hit that first. And like the other, like the stuff in the gym doesn't matter that much because they're rugby players and they've all been lifting since they were 14, 15 years old. I think what also came along with that was I definitely used to be very much on the thought process of like you always need to do like the max velocity acceleration work is always super important, and the faster the better. And I realized very quickly that like that's not true. Like our fastest player on our team was a second team wing who used to be like GB bobsled. Like he was like fastest fuck on the team, but like he can read space and change directions and perceive the environment to save his fucking life. And so, like every time he tried to change directions, it was him having to stutter step 17 times and he get tackled. And so I think that was probably one of the biggest moments. I was like, oh yeah, just because you're really fast in a straight line doesn't mean you're good at any particular sport. It doesn't mean you perceive your environment very well. And which is probably why to this day I find just people who just live and die by like someone's 40-yard or 30-meter time, whatever, like to be annoying and redundant. Because like that's cool and all, but that's not keeping them in the game. That's like this is what it is. And then another big aha moment, what came along with that time in England was the fact that we probably did the least amount of like conditioning or fitness in the league. Like we probably conditioned outside of off season and like that preseason time. Like in season, we probably conditioned. I think we conditioned 4 times. Besides like top up for players who didn't play, and 4 times all season because our Tuesday session, like our bid session was full field, 15 on 15, like everything but tackle. Like rugby, we strum in that as well. So like that served as our fitness because we just played the sport in different scenarios and environments. And so I realized, like, you know, we get caught up in wanting to prescribe the perfect conditioning model, but it's just the amateur tide is a game. I think I've heard Quam talk about this. What's the word he uses? Like specific conditioning or like almost like an SPP for actual like fitness because the amateur tide is a game that's not running endless tempos or running mass, stuff like that. It's like that's going to help prepare you for the game. But the amateur tide is playing the sport and having to react and make tackles and get up and things like that. And then the other big aha moment was like going to work for Dan Houser with the Astros and being in an environment that was so objective and so professional. Like right off the bat, like pretty early on still. And like in my career, though, at that point, I've been coaching for like 5 or 6 years. And then being in an environment that was purely objective and purely like process and systems driven. And like, hey, this is how we do things. This is what we do. If it doesn't work, we change it. And we change it ASAP because we're trying to win the World Series and we're trying to make players better and either make players who are good that we can trade away for big name players or get players to the big leagues so they can win us fucking games. And so being thrown in that kind of environment where everything mattered, you had a good objective, you had to prove that what you're doing was working. If it didn't work, you should be changing it ASAP. Like why would you wait to the end of the year? It doesn't make any sense. And so I think those were the 2 probably biggest aha moments, and it's probably like shaped a lot from how I see coaching and things like that now. Like we've had to interview a few people for roles, and like the question I've always asked that I stole from how I was being stole from you as well. I'm like, what is your process for decision making? I'm like, you telling me about like case study of one person doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Like what allowed you to make those decisions? What allowed you to make the decision further? And then how do you evaluate your process and then change it if you need to? So they're probably the 2 biggest ones for me.
Right, that's pretty fucking good. I think I met that winger, by the way. Was it the yoke black dude at Richmond?
Yeah.
I was like, look at the fucking state of you. I think somebody was like, he doesn't play for the first team.
No, he doesn't.
So for me, I think I've written about it before. First time at CVASPs, 2012, watched Valner Zedkin speak, and it happened roughly around the same time that I read Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, or Zebras for the Americans. And it forced me to realize the coach that doesn't understand stress doesn't understand training. And prior to that, I never, if anyone had asked me what is stress, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what stress was and why it mattered. I could tell you, general adaptation syndrome, alarm, resistance, exhaustion, blah, 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 blah. But I couldn't tell you the why, and I couldn't tell you what the ramifications were of that to training, like in the bigger picture. And I think there was definitely a period, in my career where I just went so far into that I probably lost sight of the mental picture a little bit. I think there is a balance to be struck now between what isn't always optimal in terms of stress status might be beneficial in terms of like for want of a better word, career. But that was like hugely influential on me because, at the end of the day, all injuries that are non-trauma related are basically a failure of the system. And that is related to stress because when you're highly stressed, that system's more likely to break. And then I guess a second one, it's not really training, but it is. So Tom, who you mentioned, came over to us in Tokyo. And, it was pretty sneaky on my part, but basically the quality of rugby was terrible. There was no structure whatsoever to the coaching of the contact area. And I disguised it as we were going to bring him in and talk about like contact conditioning, but really it was just coming up with an entire grapple curriculum, which you were there for, and you came over and just going.
Remember the head coach and Tom? Remember the head coach wanted to wrestle Tom in the meeting room? And you showed the videos.
And him coming over and doing that stuff, and obviously like Pharaoh is not like a Mr. Olympia trainer. He is a self-admitted dad bod, but trying to wrestle that motherfucker is just horrendous.
Yeah,
he is just hard. And that was around the time that I started doing jiu-jitsu. And you realize, like, meme on the internet, when you realize your bench press is absolutely fucking meaningless with this guy getting, like, rear naked choked. Then you realize, like, actually, fucking hell, I've just been beaten up by a 50-year-old IT worker, and I outweigh him by, like, 20, 30 pounds. And I used to finish every single session exhausted on the floor. And I realized, well, actually, if I'm, like, I don't know, a 7 out of 10 physically, and they're a 3 or a 4, that discrepancy hasn't helped me whatsoever. And I realized vividly the physical preparation just adds intensity to what is already there. And if there's nothing there, you are fucked. Unless you're that video of the mountain from the other week where he can survive with an MMA guy because he's 400 pounds. That was like... And I guess it all kind of ties in with everything. It's like where you mentioned, it's like, well, actually, this physical quality and this physical quality aren't actually predictive of sporting success. What it is, it's like, oh, congratulations, you bought a ticket to the dance and now you have to dance. You realize, like, fuck, all this time and effort that I've put into learning these things because I thought they mattered and that I was going to drive wins and losses. You're like, because everyone goes through this progression in their career, in my opinion. Everyone's a bodybuilder and then they realize, fuck, that doesn't work. And they throw aside Poliquin principles and then they get into Louis Simmons. And they're like, yeah, just be strong. And then you realize, fuck, all the West Side Barbell has not helped. And you throw that away. Then you go to Olympic lifting, VBT. And then you throw that away. And you're like, oh, maybe it's conditioning, Joe Jameson. You throw that away. And then you realize, well, actually, the correlation, the relationship between those qualities, even in the stopwatch sports, doesn't actually tell you much of who's going to win. There is a huge tactical technical piece. And personally, I'm sure there are coaches out there that are okay with it, but it upsets me to think that I spent 10 years studying all these things and I could be really, really good at them and I'm still going to be a loser. It really fucks me off. So I'm like, well, actually, I'm going to try and pay attention. So, for example, like that contact stuff in Tokyo, I'm going to try and learn how it fits into a tactical scheme. Like, hey, here's how you modify the technique in this situation, and we're going to do conditioning with it. Trying to get into that, and then you realize, again, James Smith was right. There's no such thing as strength and conditioning. There's just training. There's going to be more of a flavor of it in one direction or another, but there is no dividing line where it's like, oh, you've just overstepped your boundaries as a strength coach. Because with speed, it's easy to say, oh yeah, that's the strength coach's domain. But if we're doing, agility and small-sided games, there's just a seamless transition from one to the other. And that was something that I kind of like struggled with towards the back end of my career, which was arrogantly, I believed I knew more about how to solve problems that probably existed on that's the sport coach's end of the spectrum and not the strength coach's end of the spectrum. So maybe in another life I'll have a crack at it. But did you feel that way, Scott?
Yes. And, I think I had a very interesting experience in getting one that, in my opinion, is what high performance sports should be, with my first year with lacrosse. And then other experiences during my time there to where it was at the diametrical opposite end. And it was that very much you're trying to lead them to the right water and they have no intention of drinking from it, even though they talk the game of wanting this and of, wanting the high performance. But then when the reality of it sets in and you're trying to guide them towards it, it's a very staunch come to Jesus moment for them of feeling like you're invading their space and taking away what should be theirs, even though they have none of the requisite skill sets or knowledge sets to operate within that space. So yeah, I think that was another aha moment for me too, was that first year with lacrosse, realizing like you've got to have that base level of knowledge, obviously, to do the job. But at the end of the day, it comes down so much more to the intangible elements of synchronicity within the staff, fundamental alignment in the message that you're deploying with the players, and just putting all the pieces together globally has so much more of an impact, and being able to leave the meeting room on the same page about what's going to happen. And, I know we fuck things up undoubtedly, because I barely had an understanding of tactical periodization that year, much less applied to a sport that I had never worked with before in lacrosse, and still kind of really trying to navigate my way around how to, truly how to train athletes in a much more holistic manner. But it worked to the tune of wins going up, injuries going way down, performance measures going way up, second order effects of like a 98% reduction in insurance claim costs. And then subjectively, the girls and the coaches saying it was their favorite lacrosse season ever. And it was the first time in the head coach's tenure that she didn't want the season to end. So like a very holistic.
They've taken all that and moved forward with it.
They have. They've boldly pursued excellence.
Cool.
We've just edited out the last bit. Hopefully JJ's edited it out so we don't get cancelled, because I said some risque things. The fun topic for this evening is going to be one night only. You can get on the lash with anyone that you want. And where is it and who is it? TK.
Give me like 2008, 2007 John Jones, and we're going to Ibiza.
God damn. That's peak John Jones.
Yeah.
Shit. Scott, I feel like you've had it already, bro, when we went to New York.
I mean, that was one of the ladsiest weekends ever, for sure. But
so much alcohol. In bed by 10:30 as well. We did a good job.
we brunched hard as shit that day.
We did.
But I think the two that come to mind are either Dennis Rodman in Vegas, obviously biased because I just rewatched The Last Dance again. And then I would probably have to say Jordan Belfort, obviously.
I got a spicy story for you on Rodman when we're off air, by the way. Continue.
All right. And then I would say Jordan Belfort, probably somewhere in Florida on a yacht with all of his fanfare and womanly assets that tended to follow him around.
All right.
Imagine the Coon, Carmen Electra, and Dennis Rodman in Vegas. Michael Jordan walks in on him.
Bruh.
JJ.
Like one of those fish that swims under the shark. I'll just catch what the flesh that falls out of its mouth.
Is it the pilot fish?
I think so.
Tremendous. Oh, bro! Funnily enough, I went to a nightclub like that once, and what it was, don't hurt your back, saying picking up all these names that I'm about to drop, but anyway.
Is that French one?
I went to Paris to stay with Manuel Carrizo, and we went to watch Racing Metro. We went out after the game. So me, him, Imhoff, Teddy Thomas, who's the guy from the Congo? Yannick Nyanga and Dmitry Sarzeski. And they're like, oh, let's go to this nightclub. This is a nightclub in Paris called Titty Twister. I didn't realize it's like the most exclusive nightclub in Paris, right? And what it is, it's like they're so exclusive with it. They have this velvet curtain, so they won't even let poor people look into it. Like, you have to get in past the curtain to see into the club. And so we arrive. Everyone is like dressed up, and I look like a fucking bum because I didn't realize I was going out. And there's this guy in a coat with like a Johnny Depp mustache, with like a list, and he like let us all in, and he just like looked at these two women. Oh no, these two men. And he just went, "Monsieur, no," right? So, bro, we went in this club. It was tremendous, but it was just like 11s everywhere. I was easily the ugliest and poorest person in there. It was a tremendous motivator. But so anyway, the next day, I Googled this club. I was like, fuck, let me have a look at this club. And it was like, most exclusive, most expensive is blah, 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 blah. And there was like a 1-star review from, clearly it was an American. It was like, this is the worst nightclub in Paris. Tried to get entrance and was told by this Johnny Depp looking motherfucker. Tremendous. Yeah. JJ.
I mean, McGregor in Vegas, that'd be pretty good.
How about your fucking dad's in Birmingham, Alabama?
That was a shocking one for me, bro. That was shocking.
That wasn't great for you.
I was weak.
Yeah, probably go with that.
Yeah.
Monaco, maybe with an F1 driver, that'd be all right. Get on a yacht.
Bro, I'm gonna kick it old school, and I'm gonna share the link with you. Peter O'Toole and Richard Harris.
Oh my gosh.
In the 70s. And basically, I think it was they were doing a play. They're both Irish. They were doing a play in London. And they had like this like bar on the way home from the theater when they were doing a pub. So they went out and went into this bar and got absolutely wrecked. And it must have been like 4 or 5 in the morning. And the bartender's like, "You've had enough. It's time to go." And they're like, no. We'll tell you when we've had enough. He goes, no, seriously, you need to go. So he fucking wrote a check and bought the bar. And he's like, there you go, cunt. Anyway, I'll send you the full link. But yeah. Anyway, by Team Builder. This was brought to you by Team Builder. Thanks very much, guys.
By Team Builder.